The issue of palliative to cushion the effect of fuel subsidy by the President Tinubu administration has been receiving reactions in the country. Yesterday, the House of Reps approved a request for 819.5 billion naira, and that's from the Supplementary Appropriation Act of 2022 to provide some sort of palliatives that will cushion the effect of removing fuel subsidy. Let's take a look at the breakdown of how this particular money will be disbursed. We understand that 500 billion naira out of that money would be for palliatives and other capital expenditure to cushion the effect of the recent subsidy removal policy. Over 185 billion naira would go to the Ministry of Works and Housing to alleviate the impact of the severe flooding experienced in 2022, and that will be used for road infrastructure across the 6 geopolitical zones. There's a 19 billion naira that will be disbursed to the Federal Minister of Agriculture to ameliorate the massive destruction of farmlands across the country during the severe flooding experienced last year. And 35 billion naira would go to the National Judicial Council, 10 billion naira to the Federal Capital Territory Administration for critical projects, and 70 billion naira to the National Assembly. We understand that that is meant to support the working conditions of new members. We're still following closely the details of this particular disbursement. We had a new member of the House of Reps join us yesterday. He's of the opinion that it's not for individual members, but that just the same way judiciary had its share, that the legislature is also an arm of government, and it's for the operation of the National Assembly. In the Red Chamber, the president sought the approval of the Nigerian Senate for an additional $800 million loan facility. This one is for the National Social Safety Net program approved by the Federal Executive Council under the President Buhari Administration. Under the conditional cash transfer window of the program, we understand that federal government will transfer 8,000 naira per month via digital transfer to 12 million poor and low-income households for a period of 6 months, with what government calls a multiplier effect on about 60 million individuals. Joining me now is a project management consultant, is also chairman of Progressives Congress UK chapter. I understand that Mr. Duro Ihedioha is in Abuja. I also have economist and public affairs analyst Duro. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program. Mr. Ihedioha, let's begin with you. We now have an idea of federal government's intervention plan for fuel subsidy. What do you make of the 500 billion naira that has now been approved for palliatives and capital expenditure in this regard?
Thank you very much, Nifemi, for having me once again. Good evening, Nigerians. And this is to testify that the government of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu means business, and the business is to make sure life has meanings to both low, poor, average Nigerians. The palliative is a welcome benefit to the less privileged and the most poorer affected families in this country. Palliatives are welcome. They are resources that are sought to cushion the effect of any inflation or any sort of ills that the nation is going through. We know that since the removal of the first subsidy, it's been so very tough on Nigerians, and this is a
All right, Mr. Doherty seems to be making a case in support of the federal government in that regard. We lost connection with him, but let's turn to Mr. Duro. The word palliative itself brings to mind a lot of unpleasant memories. The COVID-19 experience, there's also the efforts of former President Goodluck Jonathan to provide some palliatives. If you remember, during the initial attempt at removing fuel subsidy in 2012. What do you make of government's track record in this regard?
The track record is right very on the commendable pace, because when you look at it, every nation is suffering from quite a lot of economic downturn now, and for the president to find it so great to push this bill to the National Assembly, and for the National Assembly to approve this 800 billion money for palliative is a welcome idea. It's a welcome thing for all Nigerians. And we give kudos to the president. Since his inauguration, he has not stopped working. He has taken, he's a workaholic. He started working since the day one. And we have seen that he is very passionate about Nigerians, about the masses, especially the poor and the low-income Nigerians. Right, if you look at the breakdown of the palliative, 12 million homes, 12 million poor homes and low-income earners will benefit from this. And they have I marked 8,000 for each person for the next 6 months that will be digitally transferred to them. The former president has done something in this regard by creating a means of giving money to people in terms of cushioning the effect of inflation within the system. And this is a follow-on in a positive, progressive direction to Nigerians.
All right.
By the time this takes place, we'll see the effect of all of this in agriculture, in helping the farmers to produce and helping and making sure that there's.
Let me butt in very quickly, Mr. Doherty. Yeah, I'll come back to you. Let's bring in a Duro into this conversation. Do you agree that we've had a pleasant track record in this area in the past years?
Okay, thank you again, and good evening, viewers. The truth is, if you check our records as regards social intervention programs, you see that really the government has not done well. And we don't want to have a situation again where we'll go back to what happened during the former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, where you allocate 500 billion every month for feeding of school children. And even when the COVID lockdown was in place and enforced, we still had monies being reported to have been used for feeding of the same children at home. We don't want such situation to arise again. The humanitarian or the conditional cash transfer of the past government, if anybody were to be very sincere and means well for this country, we say it the way it is, it was a failure, because we didn't have any form of audit trail for what was happening and what was going on. Yes, there needed to be palliatives for the removal of fuel subsidy. We all agree to this. But the dynamics and the flow for which we are going to execute this is what is in question. Transferring 8,000 naira to 12 million poor people. Let's do the calculation very simply. 8,000 naira for 1 million people is 8 billion naira. 8,000 naira for 10 million homes is 80 billion. So if we're talking about 12 million homes, we're talking about 96 billion in a month, right, being transferred to people. The first thing is this: we don't want a situation where we will think, okay, this is our local syndrome. The other people did theirs. Nobody is calling them to come and account for all the conditional cash transfers. Now it is our turn. Let us also have our own bite of the national cake. This is not the message we want to send to people.
All right, Mr. Duro, so in fairness to the Tinubu administration, I want to just remind you that this is funding the 2023 budget deficit. So the loan facility, just a minute, sir. The loan facility for the National Social Safety Net Program was approved by the Federal Executive Council under the previous administration. You know, the World Bank has talked about how the 10.7 trillion naira 2023 budget couldn't have been financed whether we removed subsidy or not. So my question to you is, you don't seem to have a problem with the palliative, but how it was implemented in the past. How do you think that can be fixed in the coming months?
Okay, good. palliatives can come in different dimensions. For instance, the conditional cash transfers. Rather than transferring money to individuals, 8,000 in a month, what can it do? We can use this as palliatives for the SMEs. Remember that the major drivers, I'm sure Mr. Doherty will agree with me, that the major driver of any successful economy in the world are the SMEs. Why don't we give them these funds as palliatives? We can do what we call not trader money, please, but well-structured, no interest. I didn't say low. I said no interest at all. No interest loans, right? No interest at all. In other words, these businesses that are struggling today, that have their annual turnover less than probably 500 million, between 100 million and 200 million annual turnover, you know that these are micro businesses, right? Why don't you give them these funds? They go to the bank with their proper documentation and collaterals, get access, easy access to these loans, stimulate their businesses. The man who is a fashion designer out there is using the mechanical machine. He needs the industrial machine to boost productivity. The man who is a leather manufacturer is using probably his mortar and pestle or whatever to beat that leather and all that. He needs some machinery, this little smaller machinery that are low-cost machinery to stimulate his business. What he does eventually is take people out of, because he's going to need probably somebody who's going to be learning an apprentice. He's going to need somebody who is going to probably a laborer and all that. Take people out of the unemployment sector. And if you say for you to have access to this loan, you must have a registered company. What you now have is the people playing in the informal sector. A lot of them rush to the CAC to get registered as incorporated, either business name, sole proprietorship, or incorporated businesses. They go to the banks, easy access to these loans with proper documentations, without interest. This is what we call palliative. It stimulates the economy, drags some people out of poverty, helps people to get gainfully employed. And do you know what? These people pay back these loans because it is properly structured. You can give it to other people. The chain reaction continues.
Let's bring in Mr. Doherty into this mix. So you heard Mr. Duro. He's saying that why spend 96 billion naira? And that's just for 1 month. When you do that in 6 months, that's about 576 billion, if I get the maths right. He's saying, why give this money out, as grant when you can use it to invest in small businesses? We understand that this money has already, been appropriated, and this administration may not have, the liberty to tweak it. They said the World Bank will have you use the money they're borrowing you for what you have borrowed it for. But do you agree with him that moving forward, we should think of interventions, that makes more economic sense than handing out cash?
In as much as I will agree with Mr. Duro, I will let Mr. Duro realize that this is a definitive palliative. And this palliative has to do with the oil subsidy removal, which effect is on transportation. And if you look at the breakdown of the palliative, we are having 500 billion budgeted for transfer at 8,000 naira per month to 12 million homes. And I want to let you understand that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu will not do things without getting its means of transfer or its means of audits clear for Nigerians. And if you look at it, we are talking about definitive palliative here, which means that it's supposed to be a palliative that will cushion the effect of transportation. The one you're talking about on SMEs, those are very important. Those are very important help that Nigerians need, and I believe those will come in months to come.
But Mr. Doherty, if we break this conditional transfer down a little, 8,000 naira for a household, that's like 267 naira per day. You are in Abuja right now, and I know that there's no way you fit into the category of the poorest of the poor. But how much really can 267 naira do for the poorest in the day?
Nifemi, you see, trying is better than not doing anything at all. Let me give you an example. When we got into the energy crisis in the United Kingdom, the government gave palliative to every home. And those palliatives did not come in form of cash to individual, but it came in form of reducing and paying a particular percentage of your energy bill. That ran for 6 months. Then you have the local council too, paying cash to individual home, even though some paid £100, some paid £200. We know that those monies will not sustain or will not even let the pain off. But the thing is that for those particular period, it's really solved a bit of problems. If you don't have it at all, the pain is much on every citizen. Look at the breakdown of this palliative. We have 100 billion that will be spent on road infrastructure. If our road is good, that means food will come from the rural area to urban cities, so people will be able to buy affordable food products. If you look at for Ministry of Agriculture, 19 billion, what is that supposed to do? To cushion the effect, to help the farmers to be able to put more effort, to be able to add more to their production and have a very great harvest, so that people can. All we are talking about.
All right.
Is
let me just jump in quickly. You know,
about making life more meaningful at this
exactly
period. Nigerians.
The breakdown you're talking about, Mr. Doherty, is the 819.5 billion naira from the 2022 from the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Act, which is different from the $800 million that Senate has now approved that federal government should borrow from the World Bank. But let me quickly bring Mr. Duro into this conversation. When you look at the details of this loan, according to the World Bank, they say it is a high concessional loan that will span about 30 years, and the interest rate is as low as 2.5% per annum. There's even a space of between 8 and 10 years where there is initial grace period, for Nigeria to pay back. With all of these details, would you say perhaps it's not as bad as social media think it is?
Okay, quickly, I am not a fanatic of whatever it is that social media says. I look at the empiricals. That's why I'm an economist. I look at the facts, and then I look at the economic implications of every action or reaction or inaction on the part of both the citizenry and the government. This is what I look at. And I want to clearly state this. If we told this same line that the previous administration took, we will only succeed in widening the trust gap between the citizenry and the government. And I think it is too early in the administration of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu to engage itself or to find itself in this kind of waters. And then let me also point this very clear. Mr. Doherty spoke about the UK and the palliative measures. I also want to point out that in the US, there is what we call unemployment claims, where citizens who are either not gainfully employed and all that get palliative measures from the government. But these are societies where we have complete database of the citizenry. In Nigeria today, we don't have anything of such. If anything at all of this nature is to be done, the first thing I expect Mr. Doherty, who is an integral part of this government, to be advising the president is, as a matter of urgency, engage in national census now to ascertain number one, the actual population of Nigeria, the regional population of Nigeria, the demographic population of Nigeria. How many people are youths? How many people are adults? How many people are poor? How many people are rich? How many people are gainfully employed? And all of this. When we can ascertain this number, then whatever it is that we want to do as conditional cash transfer or whatever, whether electronic or whichever means, we know we are getting to the right sources. If you're telling me that there will be audit trails and all that, how do we define who is a poor man? How do we define who cannot? You just mentioned something that it amounts to 260 naira a day. I mean, what does that do?
All right.
Where I am going,
We're
what
running
I
out of
said
time now.
the day,
I perhaps we agree that what you're saying is in the long term because the national census leadership met recently with Mr. President, and he also endorsed that position that the census is in view and should come up in a matter of months. But the question on the minds of many Nigerians is what does the federal government give in short term? And we also have to let the people know that this isn't the original idea of this administration. It was carried over, from the previous Federal Executive Council. But gentlemen, we have to leave now. Mr. Doherty, very quickly, let me have your final thoughts on this development.
What I would tell Nigerians is, please, you have to be patient. It's rough. Everybody's feeling it. Everybody's feeling the pain. But I can tell you, after the darkness, there is the light. The president is ready. The president will do everything to make sure that Nigerians live their life and Nigerians will enjoy in the coming months. Nigerian, we are in it. A renewed hope is here, and the mandate is already set.
All right.
On the road.
Mr. Iberi, your final thoughts. Are you as optimistic as well?
Yes, the last thing anybody can do for Nigeria today is not to be optimistic about Nigeria and not to believe in the Nigerian dream, irrespective of whoever appears to be our president. The onus is on us as the citizens to come together to build our nation. But in doing that, we also need our leaders to encourage us to do this, to show good leadership. So that is where I am anchoring this on. And I want to remind the president that nothing is cast in stone. Right. If this was a carryover from the previous administration, please sit down with your cabinet. Let us have the ministers come in, sit down with them and see how we can think around this and get these funds more productive for both the nation, for both you, and then we see how we can get these monies back to World Bank and then get Nigeria's chips stability.
That's our time. Talking about cabinet, Mr. President now has about 13 more days to send that list to the National Assembly. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your contribution. Project Management Consultant, Chairman APC UK Chapter, Today Doherty, Economist and Public Affairs Analyst Duro. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.